Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Security Investor Conference 2020, second edition. In today's keynote, Building Global Scale Security Venture, we have Mr. Rishi Bhargava. He is the co-founder Demisto. Welcome, Mr. Rishi, to Security Investor Conference 2020. Can we have Rishi on stage, please? Stage is all yours.
Thank you, Dr. Shah. Thank you so much, and thank you to the entire DSCI team for organizing this. Very excited to be here and share my thoughts on building a global venture, and privileged to be a keynote here. As you all heard in the previous session, I completely second the thoughts that this is an exciting time to be in cybersecurity. In fact, I think the need for cybersecurity continues to grow, and I've seen the space evolve over the last 20 years so much, where the challenges that enterprises are facing continue to grow and the solutions continue to innovate on the other end. What I'm going to try to do in today's session is share the journey that I went through at Demisto and try to reflect my learnings on how we built a global venture solving real customer problems in cybersecurity across the span of the company. So I'll do it with some set of slides, and hopefully the session gives entrepreneurs that are attending a good pathway on thinking about the right things in their journey, and the investors and other people who are attending a path to think about how to invest, how to help entrepreneurs grow their companies. So with that, let's jump in. So as I mentioned, I'm going to treat this as a case study. As you will see, every aspect and everything I share here will go through what questions did we ask in our journey at Demisto, and how did we solve those challenges, and what are the general learnings. But before we go in, a quick timeline, and this timeline gives a picture of how different phases of Demisto's existence came in. So the founding team left McAfee in July 2015, raised our first round towards the end of July from Excel. September was when we started to build our product. It took us roughly 9 months to build the product. The good news was, while we were building the product, we were actually in parallel figuring out who are the customers, what do the customers want. And we were able to close some early deals in end of 2016. And from there on, we were able to raise our round B, saw some amazing accelerated growth in very first year, getting to 4.4 million in ACV, and the second year of our full selling was 21 million. And then the couple of other rounds of funding. We got acquired by Palo Alto Networks in 2019, which is where I am right now, and continuing to help grow the product, figure out the strategy of the product. So an amazing, excited, action-packed journey over the last 5.5, 6 years, as I would say, is what I would summarize this as. The number one thing in terms of my learnings is it always starts with a team. In our case, there were 4 folks. I had worked with all of them at McAfee, met with them at McAfee, and all 3 of the folks that you see in the picture here come from Israel originally. Slavik and I are in US, Guy and Dan based out of Israel. And the reason why I specifically call out Israel is what I'm seeing in India, and I'm working with some of the security startups in India. I'm seeing the same level of energy, same level of excitement that existed in Israel or started in Israel 4 or 5 years ago. And if you guys go research Israel and their cyber economy, cybersecurity economy, the number of startups that come out of there, successful large companies both creating a lot of value for the country, but also solving real customer problems. So I see a lot of parallels and I lived it firsthand. So there's a little bit about the team. And I can tell you the biggest thing that I feel that the founding team needs to have is trust. Complementary skills, complementary values, all of those things come second. Trust comes first. When you think of a founding team, you need to make sure that you can trust your founders blindly. You should have worked with them or have a strong relationship with them. And that matters a lot. And that is one of the big pieces that we went through. The second piece is the right product. And there's a lot of iterations that go in the product. I will not say that it was an easy journey. It was not easy for us. It's not easy for any entrepreneur. But to build truly a global product, after the team, product is the most important thing. Then comes the GTM and other pieces. When you think about a product, the 4 questions that I lay down here are very critical. They look extremely simple questions. They look like obvious questions. But I encourage everybody that I'm mentoring to go through these 4 questions almost every 6 months of your startup. We went through these questions every 6 months. What is the customer problem? And the reason to revisit these is because customer problem keeps changing. The market keeps evolving. Competitors keep evolving. So you need to revisit this. Number 1, what is the customer problem? And it's super, super critical to define the customer problem, narrow enough so that you can define your solution, but broad enough so that you capture a big market. The second thing is it a big enough market? Now, in one sense, as I remember early on in the Demisto journey, it was like, hey, what do you mean by a big market? I mean, everything cannot be $1 billion market or a $5 billion market. And it almost looks like a theoretical MBA-led exercise that what is the market size? As an entrepreneur, what I want all of the people to think is this problem prevalent in your customers? Or is it only for large, very large customers? Is this problem for mid-market customers? So think about, rather than the market dollar value, is this a prevalent problem? Will enough number of customers care for this problem? Next question is, who is your competition and why is the competition not meeting the customer need? Very critical again. And I would encourage you to write down each of these answers, which is the competition actual company? Sometimes the competition may be internally built solutions. Sometimes the competition may be inertia of the customer to do something new. Sometimes the competition may be attackers are thinking of these new things to build out and nobody else has solved it. Doesn't matter, but the point of this question is, what is the alternate that a customer will go to if they don't buy your solution? And if you're able to identify this, this will help you in go-to-market and other places. And then the next one, obvious in the sequence, the question is, now that you know what the problem is, what is the competition, who is the customer, the question is, what is your unique advantage? And is it defensible? And defensible not to create a moat, but defensible in the sense that will this problem go away from the customers in a few years? Maybe the technology evolves. And a good example is, if I go solve a security problem in today's world for a SQL database like MySQL or something else, is that a problem? No, because customers are moving from SQL databases to other database data storage form factors. So should I worry about that? No, because in long run, that defensible advantage goes away. And these 4 questions essentially will help you define what the right product is, define what the right solution is, define how defensible the solution is, and how do you go about building it. And the bottom line that I point out here is the right way to think about it is you're not going to get these answers by reading. You're only going to get these answers by talking to a lot of customers. And I understand it's very hard for entrepreneurs to find customers to talk to. Most of the people come to me is like, how do I find people who need this? I do not have customer connections. And the only thing I say is there's no shortcut there. It's a lot of perspiration, cold calling, to LinkedIn emails, to connecting on LinkedIn. Just be at it. Not easy, but the more conversations you have, the better your understanding and clarity will be, and the better you'll be able to define your product. And the other thing is, this journey doesn't stop when you get your product out there in the market at GA. You need to keep revisiting this. Even till date, we are at Demisto reinventing, asking these questions. How is the customer problem changing? So this is a journey that you can go through repeatedly in the life of the company and make sure that whatever you're building is still on the right track. Is it changing? Can you redefine it? And all of those. Now that you have, I would say, understanding of what the product is, then comes the go-to-market. I cannot emphasize enough that go-to-market should fit what your market, what your customer, what your product is. You cannot define your go-to-market strategy or how are you going to sell without a clear understanding of the product. And this was a learning as we went through Demisto. We learned like our product is an orchestration product, which is going to be an on-prem product because customers want it on on-premise, which basically means we will deliver software, which means we should work with partners who would install it. So let's go figure out a go-to-market motion using the channel partners. It could be completely different for a SaaS company. So my point is, again, the product influences the go-to-market heavily. And I named this, the title of the slide, How to Rise Above the Noise. And I think this is a very, very important piece from a go-to-market perspective on going and differentiating yourself in the marketing landscape or in a go-to-market landscape in a crowded market. As you heard, right? The security market is crowded. Lots of startups, lots of large companies, pretty much the same message. There's only a limited number of adjectives that you can use to define a security product. So there will be overlap. The way we differentiated ourselves is, again, this 4-step process, if you ask me. Who's your customer? And when you say customer, both buyer and the user. Understand the difference between the buyer and the user. The director of SOC or the CISO is the buyer in case of Demisto. But who's the user? SOC analyst. Why is it important to differentiate? Because you may want to influence both of them. You may want to go market to the analyst and market to the buyer. Where are they hanging out? Where are they engaging with each other? Why? Because then you need to figure out, where do you go market to them? Do you go create your own community? Do you go post yourself or get in front of themselves, get in front of your customers via these other channels? What we found with Demisto, they were having Twitter chats, Usenet groups, SANS mailing lists, and we realized there is no central place where these security analysts engage, network, learn from each other. And that ended up in the fact that we defined the world's largest incident response community on Slack. And we built that community. How did we come around that? Because I found there was nobody, no single place where they would hang out. So we said, let's give them a platform where they engage, independent whether they are a customer or not, they engage. And that helped us a lot to build that community trust. What are they reading? How do they learn? What are they discussing? What would they like? And this question basically helps you define, how can you deliver more value? Should we publish some best practices on incident response? And this is the answers are here, what we found. What are the tools for forensics? So the point of this is really, really closely understand anything and everything about your customer. And once you do that, then you will be able to get to them and get their attention. And the last point here is, what can you give them which is of value? In our case, we realized that all of the security analysts, SOC analysts, are looking for playbooks or recipes to solve different incident types. They want to learn, they want to figure out what are the best set of tools. And to get each of these pieces of information, they are looking all around on different places. We created a web section where there were free playbooks for incident. There was a tools directory, all free tools, which eventually helped us build our thought leadership, but also helped customers in their day-to-day job, independent of the Demisto product. And as they started to use these other tools, they got to know about Demisto. So at a later stage, when our sales teams would go in, show up there, they were already familiar with Demisto. And important thing was, we did this worldwide. I mean, none of these tools were dependent on region, dependent on any other place. This was, in today's digital world, you really do this worldwide. And we had analysts from Australia to Europe to US to Bangladesh. We remember people were signing in. India, worldwide, way before we were a big name, there were people who were just coming in, consuming these playbooks, commenting, discussing with each other, which drove a lot of trust in the Demisto brand name. And as you build these things, the next comes like, how can we grow and build the funnel before you start to hit the sales cycle? And to me, you get the growth by giving away stuff which is of value. And it is super critical. I mean, this is a word which has been beaten up in all different ways, growth marketing. My honest belief is growth marketing must be honest and useful. If you do not give your users something of value, then they're not going to come back to you. Really do not go in with an intent to sell the product. Eventually you will sell the product, but if you really want the attention, give them something valuable. Educate the industry about the trends, about the important things that are happening, not just about your product, and create very, very helpful tools for the users. And if you do this, then the users will eventually come back, give you the trust, will try your product. We did this by creating a couple of open source projects, some free tools. And I think our goal again with all of these things was initially to learn from the community, what should we build, and to give something back. And the end result was we started to get such an amazing inflow of security analysts because they found the tools useful. They would say, okay, let's try the Demisto product. And then the product started to deliver value to them and they would go buy the product. So I think super critical to keep in mind that from a growth marketing perspective, a lot of people have tried a lot of different things. And the most important thing is really put yourself in the shoes of the user and says, what can I create for the user which will be helpful? How can I drive awareness for the user? What does the user want to learn? And then you'll see the win. Now, if you look at it so far, just a quick recap. We have talked about the team. How do you build the right product? What questions to ask around the product? How do you go to market? What things to think? Where are customers hanging out? And you start to get, assuming at this stage, you start to get some early traction. You start to understand where do the users want, deliver some value to them. And then comes this scale time. You have your early set of customers. A very big decision at that stage for the CEO and the founding team for the company is, how do you now accelerate or pour fuel in the fire so that you can really see that hockey stick, the proverbial triple, triple, double, double hockey stick, which every venture capitalist would want to see. My suggestion there is, I think you need to figure out how do you amplify the message beyond your dollar investment. I mean, one simple answer is if you figured out that your product is a good fit, you know your customer profile, you can go just hire a lot of salespeople. I actually say that one of the things I'm a person who believes in very simple fundamentals, which is drive efficiency. And you drive efficiency by having your partners amplify the message. So not only you need to invest in sales, of course, but how do you get your partners to amplify? For us, we actually put together a lot of emphasis on customer success, referenceability. We used to really focus on customers and say, hey, are you happy with the product? If you're happy with the product, would you be able to be a reference, be a private reference? And in security world, it's interesting. I used to believe customers don't talk, but for us, they talked. When people love the product, they're willing to share that love. They may not do it publicly, but they may do it in a one-on-one session. We started to hear that customers were holding meetups in a smaller group and sharing their successes. And that just happened because we really, really focused on the customer success. The other side, and I think this depends on your product, this depends on your go-to-market. If you are going to use your channel partners, if you build integrations, like Demisto product was all about building integrations, you could use technical partners and channel partners to amplify your message. A good example here is for every dollar spent that we did as Demisto on an event meaning a marketing event, we had channel partner bring in a customer of theirs because we could spend the dollar as a startup, but we did not have the reach that a channel partner would have. We did not have a reach that combined multiple other technical partners could have. So we made it a mandatory thing for all of our marketing events that if we spend dollar on marketing event, we need to have a technical partner and a channel partner. Channel partner will drive more attendance and technical partners will invest dollar as well, just like we do. So figure out what's the amplification of the message path for you once you have figured out what your message is, your go-to-market is. And this may differ for each startup. I've touched upon a little bit on the customer success, but I cannot emphasize that your early customers make or break the company. You need to really figure out how do you keep them happy. Now, be careful. If you thought you got a customer which is not a good fit for whatever reason, maybe your product direction changes, that does not mean you cannot part ways with the customer. But if you think the customers that you got are the right set of customers in the beginning, be very, very committed to their success. Make sure they implement the product. Make sure they are using the product. Shelfware kills startups. And there was a time where there was this whole philosophy that go and sell the product, move on. We did so many things to incent the sales teams, to incentivize the customer success teams to drive adoption and involve product and engineering. I mean, we really had a very, very transparent culture where engineering team had access to customers. Customers would be able to contact us and we would put engineers in front of it. So a lot of emphasis on customer success and making sure customers get the most value. And then the bottom three things you see here were all I would call innovations which helped us do better. We created a public Slack channel instead of Zendesk. Nobody likes to go submit a ticket. They want to talk to a person. They want to chat with a person real time. So if you are able to deliver customer success in real time, do that. As a startup, you may not have global presence. So we actually said, okay, our engineering is in Israel. They will cover this time zone. We have one customer success or two customer success people in US. They will cover this time zone and share the work. And in a Slack channel, there were people were able to see all the chats. So when the shift handover happened, they were able to see what customer talked. Customer never noticed any drop. They had help available whenever they wanted. And then we innovated a lot on how do you engage with the customer? How do you take them through the product journey? Quarterly business reviews with the large customers or even smaller ones, give them reports back on the usage. Eventually, the bottom line is, and it's very interesting, I still say that to the customer, says, it's in our best interest that you use the product because guess what? It's an annual subscription model. If we don't make you happy, you're not going to come back the next year. And for every dollar you lose from renewal, you're going to actually have to go make it up in a new deal. And guess what? New deal is easily 5x harder than a renewal if you do a good job. Very important point, but most of the founders miss this because they are focusing on getting new customers and forget about this piece. So super critical to think about customer success as the piece. And I think my last slide, this is a super critical slide. I mean, I've gone through product, team, marketing, sales, customer success. Alignment is this. I don't know if people have done kayaking here in your view, but if you have, if the two or more people on the kayak are not synchronized, kayak goes in a circle. That's the best analogy I give you. It's like if you row on different sides, you'll go in a circle. Why? Because you're not aligned. To me, across the startup, CEO and founding team's job needs to be aligning. If there are product gaps, marketing needs to know that. They should not be pushing hard. Sales need to understand that to be able to cover for it. Alignment at every stage, growth stage, not growth stage, challenges, full transparency, full alignment is critical. And this, to me, just like I started with the trust between the founding team, I would say was a critical aspect for our success overall. And I truly believe the growth comes when every business function is synchronized in a startup, because then they amplify each other's successes. And an amazing product will be handed over to marketing. They'll be able to do the right messaging, which will then be going to the sales. They can sell it. Customer success makes the customer implementation go well, and customer brings the feedback back to the product becomes better, and the cycle continues. So this alignment is super critical. And I think this one is also one of those things where you need to pay attention, because when you are in the middle of it, you lose the big picture and says, oh, fantastic thing on product, this release invested in this capability, but did we highlight it in marketing? Did the sales got trained? Did the CS understand how to implement it? Each of these pieces. So I think to me, this alignment is super critical, and I will end it right there. So that was my view, my journey as we went through the entire journey of Demisto. I'll close with one thought, which is, from my perspective, entrepreneur journey is very, very hard. And in that journey, getting the support from your family, from your founders, from your investors, everybody's support is super critical. And one of the things which is nothing to do with building a global venture here, I learned in my personal journey, was to make sure you take care of yourself in that journey. It's very easy to get disoriented. It's very easy to start to get stressed about it. It's not an easy journey. But the more you're able to get a healthy balance, take a step back, build the trust within family, the better you'll be able to execute on all of the steps that I went through. I hope that session was useful. Again, thank you, DSAI team, for the opportunity. You guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn or other places, and I'll be happy to help in any way I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi, for joining us and for this wonderful and informative session. Thank you once again. For the next session, the state of cybersecurity investment in India, I would request Rishi to come on the stage and take over. Can we have a Rishi on the stage, please?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.